You ever notice how people tell you to prove yourself in love, to always show her, always give more, always chase harder? But let me ask you this, if giving endlessly worked, why do so many men end up exhausted? Why do they pour energy, time and emotion into someone only to feel invisible in the end? Why does the guy who tries the hardest usually finish last? Here's the truth most won't say. It's not the chasing that creates attraction. It's not the constant proving. It's not bending yourself to every mood, every test, every demand. No, it's something quieter, something stronger, something rarer. It's calm, it's steadiness. It's the ability to stand your ground without turning cold and without playing games. Because here's the problem most men face. How do you respond when she tests your patience? How do you act when she pulls you into drama? How do you handle it when your emotions feel ready to explode? Do you fight back? Do you panic? Do you over-explain? Or can you breathe? Can you stay steady when the storm is trying to pull you under? This is where most men fall. They think love means always reacting. They think being a man means always proving. But what if it's the opposite? What if the true power is silence when others expect noise? What if the real attraction is the man who cannot be shaken? And here's what I promise you. By the end of this video, you'll see how detachment, calmness, and the ability to create space without playing games gives you freedom, gives you strength, and makes her respect you on a level chasing never could, because calm is king. And the man who owns his calm owns the room. Ever wondered why some men lose respect the moment they open their mouth? It's not because they're weak. It's not because they're bad men. It's because they don't understand the weight of silence. Think about it. How many times have you said too much too fast, just to fill the air? How many times have you over-explained yourself when no explanation was needed? How many times have you rushed to defend yourself, even when you weren't being attacked? And here's the problem. Every extra word you spill, every nervous explanation, every emotional reaction, it lowers your value in her eyes, not because she hates you, but because it shows you're ruled by impulse instead of wisdom. Now let me ask you this. Why is it that the man who says less often holds more power? Why do people lean in when he speaks instead of tuning out? Why does his calm presence feel heavier than another man's loudness? Because silence is strength. Calm is confidence, and restraint is control. Most men don't realize this. They think attraction is about proving worth through words, promises, and constant reassurance. But deep down, women don't want a man who convinces them with noise. They want a man who reassures them with steadiness. Picture this. She tests you. She throws fire. She waits for you to burn. But instead of panicking, you pause, you breathe, you answer slowly, or sometimes you don't answer at all. What happens? The power shifts. The room changes. She realizes you can't be dragged into chaos. And here's the deeper truth. This isn't just about her, it's about you. It's about mastering your own storms before they master you. Because if your emotions control you, anyone can control you. But if you control your emotions, nobody can move you unless you allow it. So I'll ask again, why chase with noise when silence speaks louder? Why explain your worth when calmness already proves it? Why be desperate to be heard when true presence commands attention without effort? Men fall because they don't trust their silence. Kings rise because they know silence is not weakness, it's a weapon. And when you learn this, you stop reacting to every little test. You stop feeding every little fire. Instead, you stand like stone, calm, grounded, unshakable. That's when attraction grows. That's when respect deepens. That's when peace becomes your new normal. Why does distance make the heart grow fonder? Why is it that the less you're seen, the more you're missed? Why is it that the man who is not always available suddenly becomes the one she values the most? Strange, isn't it? We live in a world that tells men, be there all the time, show up, give more, prove more. Yet when you follow that advice, what happens? You get taken for granted. Your presence becomes background noise. Your love becomes too easy to reach, and easy things lose value fast. Have you ever noticed this? The friend who's always around, always calling, always texting, you stop missing them. But the friend who disappears, the one living his own life, chasing his own path, when he finally shows up, you feel his presence like a burst of energy. Why? Because rarity creates value. And here's the brutal truth. The same law applies in relationships. If you're constantly in her face, constantly chasing, constantly making her the center of your universe, she won't admire it. She won't even respect it. She will expect it. And expectation kills appreciation. But when you have a life, your own mission, your own battles, your own victories, something changes. You don't need to announce your worth. Your absence itself speaks it. You become the man she thinks about, not because you're pushing for attention, but because your silence echoes. Now let me ask you, why do you think so many men lose attraction over time? Is it because they stop loving? No, it's because they stop living for themselves. They give up their edge, their mystery, their drive. They become predictable, and predictability is deadly to desire. Think about this carefully. When you spend every waking second trying to please her, what happens? You leave no room for her to wonder, no space for her to miss you, no distance for her to feel the pull of your presence. Scarcity works in every area of life. Gold is valuable because it's rare. Time is precious because it's limited. Why would your presence be any different? And here's the beauty. Absence is not manipulation. It's not some trick to get her attention. It's simply the natural byproduct of living a full life. When you're training, building, creating, learning, achieving, of course you can't be glued to your phone all day. Of course you can't be waiting around for validation. You're too busy becoming valuable. And that is exactly what makes her crave you more. Not the chase, not the constant giving, but the fact that she sees you are not hers by default. You are a man with a life, and she has to earn space in it. So ask yourself, are you living in a way that makes your presence too common? Are you giving so much that she has nothing left to long for? Or are you building a life so full, so purposeful, that your absence becomes powerful? Because here's the paradox. The man who tries to stay close all the time ends up being pushed away, but the man who can step back, who can let space breathe, ends up being pulled closer. That's not a game, that's nature. Why do some men lose everything the moment pressure shows up? Why is it that one sharp comment from her, one small test, one little silence can make a man explode, beg or break down? And why do other men, when facing the same moment, stay calm, steady, unshaken, and somehow walk away respected, even desired, even more than before? This is the hidden battlefield most men never see. It's not the date, it's not the gifts, it's not the compliments, it's the test. The test of your calm, because whether you notice it or not, she will test you, not because she's evil, not because she wants to destroy you, but because her nature looks for strength. She wants to know, is this man really solid, or is he pretending? And here's the painful truth. Most men fail. They react too fast. They get defensive. They raise their voice. They panic. They chase. They lose their center. And when you lose your center, you lose her respect. Think about it. Have you ever gotten angry at a small comment, something like, "Why are you so quiet?" Or "Do you even care?" And instead of staying calm, you snapped, you argued, you over-explained. What happened after? Did she lean closer, or did she lean away? Now picture the opposite, a man who doesn't rush to defend himself. He breathes, he smiles, he doesn't need to fight every little storm, and because he stays calm, the storm ends before it ever begins. Tell me, which man do you think a woman feels safer with? The one who explodes at pressure, or the one who remains unshaken? This is where emotional mastery comes in, not suppression, not acting fake, but control. The ability to feel an emotion, acknowledge it, and decide how you'll respond instead of letting it own you. That calmness is magnetic, because calmness says, I am not controlled by the world around me, I am grounded in myself. And what is more attractive than a man who cannot be easily moved? Now here's the deeper problem. Men are trained to believe that reacting equals caring, that showing intensity means you love her, that proving your emotions makes you real. But reality doesn't work that way. Intensity without control looks weak, over-explaining looks needy, and panic looks like you're not built for pressure. What if you flipped the script? What if, instead of reacting instantly, you allowed silence to work for you? What if, instead of defending yourself, you let your calm presence show her the truth? What if, instead of fighting for control, you showed you already are in control? See, calmness is not passive, it's not doing nothing, it's doing the hardest thing, refusing to give your power away to every test, every word, every mood swing, every silence. Calmness is the flex most men don't know how to use. And here's the secret. Calmness builds trust. Because if you can stay calm with her, she believes you can stay calm with life, with chaos, with storms, with challenges bigger than her words. And that right there is the proof of strength every woman is looking for. So ask yourself, when the test comes, will you crumble? Will you chase? Will you argue? Or will you sit still in your calm and let your strength do the talking? Because at the end of the day, the crown doesn't go to the loudest man, it goes to the calmest one. And calm, my friend, is king. Why is it that some men lose themselves the moment they get into a relationship? Why do they suddenly start revolving their whole life around one woman, like the sun around the earth? Why do they forget their mission, their drive, their fire, only to wake up one day confused, drained, and rejected? This is one of the biggest hidden traps, and here's the scary part. Most men don't even realize they're in it until it's too late. Think about it. How many guys do you know who were once ambitious, hungry, alive, and then the moment they got attention from a woman, everything changed? Suddenly the gym stops, the projects stall, the goals fade, and their world shrinks into dinners, texts, and constant availability. But let me ask you, what happens when she realizes she has become the only purpose in his life? What happens when she sees he has no mission outside of her? Does she feel inspired, or does she feel pressure? Does she lean closer, or does she start leaning away? Here's the truth most men refuse to hear. A woman doesn't want to be your entire world. She wants to be a part of your world. And if your world is small, if your life is empty, if your days revolve only around her, then what exactly is she stepping into? Would you step onto a ship that has no direction? Would you follow a captain who keeps asking the passengers, "So where should we go today?" Of course not, because leadership demands direction, and direction comes from purpose. Now here's the problem. Modern advice tells men the opposite. It tells you to give her your all. It tells you to prove your love with endless time, endless gifts, endless devotion. But what happens when giving becomes overgiving? What happens when proving becomes begging? You lose your edge. You lose your mystery. And worst of all, you lose yourself. But imagine this instead. Imagine you're a man on a mission. You have goals, you have passions, you have something you wake up for beyond her text or her approval. And when she steps into your life, she feels it, she senses it. She knows she's not the reason you breathe, but she's part of the journey you're already on. Which man do you think she's drawn to? The one who drops everything just to orbit her every move, or the one who stands firm on his path, allowing her to join him but never abandoning the direction he's headed? That's the difference between attachment and purpose. One suffocates, the other inspires. And here's the powerful irony. When you stop making her your sole focus, when you return to your mission, she doesn't feel neglected, she feels relieved, she feels admiration. She feels attraction growing stronger, not weaker. Because deep down she doesn't want to be your cage, she wants to be your ally. So ask yourself, what are you building right now? What are you chasing that has nothing to do with her? What is the mission that even if everyone left tomorrow would still keep you moving? Because when you have that, calmness is natural, scarcity is natural, confidence is natural, and attraction, that becomes effortless. At the end of the day, the man who forgets his mission loses her, but the man who lives his mission, builds his mission, protects his mission, he never has to chase, because women don't follow men who chase them, they follow men who are already moving towards something greater. Have you ever noticed how silence can be louder than words? Think about it. A pause in the middle of a heated conversation, a text left unread, a moment where you choose not to explain yourself. Suddenly, that silence becomes heavier than any explanation you could have given. But why does silence hold so much power? Why does the absence of words often create more curiosity, more desire, and more respect than endless talking ever could? And here's the bigger question. Why do so many men fail to master this weapon, instead drowning themselves in over-explaining, over-texting, and over-chasing? The problem isn't that men don't know how to communicate, it's that they don't know when not to. How many times have you sent a second message because she didn't reply fast enough, only to feel foolish afterward? How many times have you kept explaining your point in an argument, thinking more words would make you more understood, but it only made you look weaker? How many times have you revealed too much about your feelings too early, thinking honesty would deepen the bond, but instead it stripped away all the mystery and attraction? See, silence is not emptiness, silence is space, and space creates value. When you speak less, your words carry more weight. When you don't respond instantly, your presence feels more rare. When you don't explain every thought, she is left wondering what's really going on inside your mind, and that wondering is where desire is born. But here's the danger. Most men are afraid of silence. They confuse silence with weakness. They think if they don't respond right away, they'll lose her. They think if they don't explain themselves, she won't understand them. They think if they don't constantly remind her of their interest, she'll forget about them. But is that really the truth? Or is it actually the opposite? Isn't it true that people value what they must work to understand? Isn't it true that curiosity grows in the gaps, not in the constant flow of answers? Isn't it true that mystery is destroyed when everything is always revealed, always available, always explained? So let me ask you this. What if silence is not a weakness but a strategy? What if saying less could actually make you more powerful in her eyes? What if holding back your words, your availability, your explanations is the very thing that makes her lean in closer, craving more from you? Because here's the secret. Silence, when used correctly, does not push people away, it pulls them in. Have you ever noticed that the men who seem to get the most respect are not the loudest in the room, but the ones who move with a certain calmness, the ones who don't rush, the ones who don't react, the ones who make you wonder what's going on in their mind because they never look rattled? That calmness, that composure, that ability to stay unshaken, it creates an aura of power. But here's the real question. Why do so many men crumble the moment tension shows up? Why do they lose control over their emotions and in the process lose their influence too? The problem isn't that men don't feel emotions, it's that they let emotions control them instead of mastering them. How many times have you snapped back in anger, only to regret it later when you realized you gave your power away in a single outburst? How many times have you tried to win an argument by raising your voice, but instead only proved how fragile your control really was? How many times have you let nervousness make you over-talk, over-explain, or stumble when you should have been calm and precise? Emotional control isn't about being cold, it's not about pretending you don't feel, it's about owning your emotions so deeply that they never own you. Because here's the truth. When a man cannot control himself, he cannot lead. And when he cannot lead, he cannot be respected, desired, or seen as rare. But let's flip this around. What happens when a man masters his emotions? When he doesn't overreact to disrespect, but instead addresses it calmly and directly, doesn't that command far more respect than shouting? When he doesn't crumble under pressure, but instead slows down, thinks clearly, and responds with patience, doesn't that make others trust him more? When he doesn't beg for attention but remains composed in her silence, doesn't that make her chase him harder? Ask yourself, why do women test men emotionally? Why do they push buttons, ignore texts, act moody, or throw subtle challenges into conversations? Could it be that they are not just reacting, but testing to see if the man before them is easily shaken or if he is truly grounded, testing to see if he is led by impulse or guided by principle, testing to see if his emotions rule him or if he rules them? And here's the hidden problem most men face. They think emotions must be suppressed, but suppression is not mastery, it's just bottling up. True mastery is being aware of what you feel, understanding it, and still choosing how you respond. That is power. So let me ask you this, what if emotional control is not just about relationships, but about life itself? What if the man who controls his emotions also controls his future? What if the ability to remain calm when others lose their cool is the single trait that separates ordinary men from men who stand out, men who attract without chasing, men who lead without forcing? Because the truth is this, the man who cannot control his emotions is a slave, but the man who can control them becomes a master, not only of himself, but of how others see and respond to him. Let me ask you something that might sound strange at first. Why does a man's silence sometimes speak louder than his words? Why is it that a man who doesn't rush to fill the gaps, who doesn't explain himself endlessly, who doesn't constantly try to impress, often ends up being the most mysterious and magnetic? Could it be that silence used with intention is not weakness but power? Think about it. How many men lose respect because they talk too much, too fast, too desperate to be understood? How many men explain themselves into weakness, making excuses, oversharing details, giving away the mystery that could have been their strength? How many men, in fear of losing someone, fill every quiet moment with noise, chasing instead of letting their presence do the work? The problem is this, most men fear silence, they fear space, they fear the pause, they think if they're not constantly doing something, the woman will lose interest. So they text more, call more, try harder, and every time they do, they unknowingly prove they don't trust themselves. They prove they don't trust their own value. But what happens when a man is unafraid of silence? What happens when he doesn't feel the need to explain, to beg, to justify himself? What happens when he can let her wonder, let her miss him, let her lean into the silence instead of running from it? Doesn't that create curiosity? Doesn't that make his presence feel more rare? Doesn't that make her work harder for his attention instead of the other way around? Ask yourself, why is it that when a man doesn't rush to answer a test, it feels more powerful than when he jumps in immediately? Why does calm silence sometimes crush the strongest argument? Why does patience feel more commanding than panic? Could it be that silence itself is a form of strength? And here's the hidden truth. Women notice the way a man handles silence. If you fill it with nervous energy, they see weakness. If you fill it with excuses, they see guilt. If you fill it with endless talking, they see insecurity. But if you stand calmly in it, if you let the quiet work in your favor, they feel your steadiness, they feel your unshakable self-worth, they feel your confidence without you saying a single word. But here's the problem most men never solve. They confuse silence with avoidance. They think silence means running away. No, silence is not running. It is standing still, firm, certain, untouchable. It is sending a message without words. I am not rattled, I am not desperate, I know who I am. And isn't that exactly what creates attraction? Isn't that exactly what makes others want to lean in, to get closer, to try harder for your attention? Isn't that what separates a man who chases from a man who is chased? So the question is, are you ready to stop fearing silence? Are you ready to use it as a weapon of strength instead of a weakness to run from? Are you ready to let your calm pauses speak more than 100 words could ever say? Because the truth is this: words can be argued with, silence cannot. Let me ask you something that cuts deeper than most men dare to face. Why do so many men lose all of their power the moment emotions rise? Why do men who look strong on the outside suddenly collapse when tension shows up? Why does one harsh word, one test, one argument strip them of the calm that made them attractive in the first place? Think about it. How many times have you seen a man go from composed to defensive in seconds? How many times have you seen a man who seemed confident until pressure revealed his cracks? How many men claim to be in control, yet one woman's mood decides their mood? One comment decides their confidence. One disagreement decides their peace. The problem is this: most men are trained to react fast, react emotionally, react without thought. If she raises her voice, they raise theirs louder. If she pulls back, they chase. If she questions them, they defend with 10 explanations. They don't respond. They react. And reacting is always weakness. Ask yourself, what does it say about a man when every little thing rattles him? Doesn't it prove he's not in control of himself? Doesn't it reveal that his emotions own him instead of the other way around? Doesn't it show that his value is fragile, depending on the approval of someone else? Now imagine the opposite: a man who doesn't flinch when tested, a man who doesn't rush to argue when accused, a man who doesn't lose his center when challenged. Instead of reacting, he stays calm, he observes, he listens, and then when he speaks, his words carry weight because they come from stillness, not panic. Isn't that the kind of presence that feels unshakable? Isn't that the kind of man who commands respect without shouting, without chasing, without proving? Here's the truth most men ignore. Calmness is not about pretending not to feel. It's not about suppressing emotions until you explode. Calmness is about owning your emotions so fully that they no longer control you. It's about mastering the storm inside, so the outside never sees you shaken. That is why calm men are magnetic. That is why calm men seem rare. That is why calm men hold power others can't touch. But here's the hidden trap. Society tells men to express everything or hold nothing back. And yet, isn't it strange that the men who overshare their pain, who constantly vent, who bleed their emotions onto everyone around them, often lose respect instead of gaining it? Why? Because without control, emotion looks like chaos, and chaos kills attraction. So the real question is this: do you want to be the man who is led by his emotions, always chasing, always defending, always trying to prove? Or do you want to be the man whose calmness sets the tone for every room he walks into? Do you want to be the man who collapses when tested, or the man who becomes even stronger under pressure? Because here's the truth you can't escape. Women don't test men because they hate them. They test because they want to feel the strength of a man's frame. They want to feel his calmness, his steadiness, his control. And if you react with fear, with anger, with insecurity, you fail the test. But if you respond with calmness, with patience, with quiet certainty, you pass. So I'll ask you again, are you ready to stop being led by emotions and start leading with calm? Are you ready to let calmness be your crown, your weapon, your silent proof of strength? Are you ready to be the man who doesn't get pulled into the storm, but instead becomes the anchor others cling to? Because that's the difference between a man who is easily forgotten and a man who is never replaced. Let's end this with a truth most men never hear. Calmness is not just a tool for attraction, it is the very foundation of your freedom, because at the end of the day, it's not about women, it's not about tests, it's not even about relationships. It's about whether you are the kind of man who can walk through the fire of life and remain untouched by the flames. Think carefully. When you strip away all the noise, social media, opinions, pressure from family, the need to prove, the hunger for validation, what remains? Just you. And if you're not calm inside, if you can't sit with yourself in silence without fidgeting, without reaching for distraction, then no amount of tricks, no amount of chasing, no amount of game will save you, because you don't have yourself. And a man who doesn't have himself can never truly have anyone else. But a calm man, he owns time. He is not rushed, he is not desperate, he is not ruled by fear or urgency. A calm man can wait. A calm man can walk away. A calm man can let silence speak louder than words. And isn't that the highest power? To never be forced into action, to choose everything you do from stillness, not from weakness. This is why calmness wins, because calmness protects you from manipulation. It shields you from chasing what doesn't serve you. It keeps you from pouring energy into battles that don't matter. Calmness turns you into the man who doesn't run after opportunities. They come to him. Women feel it, people feel it, even enemies feel it. That sense that nothing can move you unless you decide to move. And let's be clear, calmness is not emptiness. It's not the absence of fire. It's the control of fire. A calm man can still be fierce. He can still be passionate. He can still be dangerous. But he decides when to unleash that fire. Not emotions, not tests, not someone else's demands. That is the kind of control that makes others lean in. That is the kind of strength that makes your presence rare. So let's close the loop. What have we really been building toward all this time? You thought this was about women, but it was always about you. The reason detachment, absence, scarcity, self-worth, purpose and confidence matter is because they all flow from one core truth. You can't lead a life of power if you don't first master your inner calm. And now you have the solution. Not a trick, not a game, not a script, a way of living. Live calm, live centered, live with silence as your ally and patience as your strength. Watch how attraction comes to you. Watch how freedom grows around you. Watch how peace becomes your natural state. Because calm is not just king, calm is the crown, calm is the throne, calm is the kingdom itself. And the man who rules his calm rules everything. That's the solution. It's been given to you. The question is, will you live it?